You're listening to the WB Download, coming to you from Wieland Builders Showroom in Studio 1C. We are a podcast centered around building custom homes, the customer experience of building a custom home, and a really entertaining listen from many great guests and interviews that may or may not have anything to do with building. I'm excited to share with you their voice and their stories that will enhance your idea of the custom builder world. Well, hello again, everybody. I'm Jeff Wieland with Wieland Builders here for the WB Download, and we're excited to bring you another episode here on this 25th day of April. And I'm going to talk about, of course, I'm the guest again today. So we're going to do every other one where I'm the guest. I'm going to talk about what it takes to build these houses and kind of take everybody through. I try and do it to where we're giving you the inside scoop as a homeowner, and if any builders are listening out there, maybe it helps them. And I always say that if there's any builders out there listening and they have something to add to it, that's always cool too. I'm not trying to spill secrets. I'm not trying to keep secrets. I want everybody to be able to know certain things. And if there's a different way we can do it and we can all do it better, then that's helping the customers in the long run. So, we're excited to be here, and I'm going to get into it, jump right into the what's going on segment. And man, as far as building houses and between the last 2 weeks when we had Kelly on here, by the way, I think that was a great podcast. I thought she did a great job talking about what we do around here and what she does. But as far as the last 2 weeks, we've had some really good weather, which for me, that means, and I talk about this, and you're going to hear me talk about this all the time, is that we are out there hustling and we're back to work and we're cleaning things up, getting things graded out, getting things done that we've been trying to get done for several months now, and put you in a different mood. Of course, I say that and it's overcast and kind of cold out there today, but it's good to get that stuff done and get it going. We've got several houses we're trying to finish up, so we always want to make sure that we're getting those things done and yards in, and that makes it difficult to do usually in the spring when it got all that rain. But nonetheless, we're getting there, so we're pretty excited about that. On the farm there, we just got a shipment of cows in last Tuesday. I bought some a couple weeks ago at Branchview Angus down in Kentucky, and I bought some more the following weekend at the Central Kentucky Angus Association, and had a guy bring them up to me. He was coming this way, so I had a guy bring them up to me, paid him, and we unloaded 6 or 7 of them Tuesday night. And it's looking good. So I think right now we're done buying, and we're just going to keep breeding and getting our farm going again here. We're building fence, and now the grass is turning green and growing, so we're mowing, getting areas prepped for hay, and it's just beautiful. It changes everything when you're on a farm like that, and the trees start getting leaves on them, and the grass is growing, and that's what we want in the springtime because we're grass farmers. I had knee surgery last Friday, which was unexpected, but I'm having this awesome Dr. Stein over at Beacon, and he said, hey, we were looking at my MRI and just said, hey, let's go over and talk to the other doctor. And lo and behold, 4 days later, I'm in there getting surgery. I torn my meniscus and torn something else and tore it all up. I could have been a lot nicer to my body growing up, and being in the construction business doesn't help things at all. And just wear ourselves out. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it might have been the double toe touch front flip that I did on a trampoline with my daughter, Raina, and she coerced me into doing it. I hope that's not what it was, though. I hope I'm just, working like crazy, and that's what I'm going to tell everybody anyway. For baseball, so I'm coaching baseball. I'm an assistant coach for baseball. I thought that I wasn't going to be coaching anything for a little while. Football is already creeping up on us. The football signups were just completed last week, and they already gave us our team. I'm the head coach of the football 6th grade for Lebanon, assistant coach for baseball 5th grade right now, and then a head coach for basketball, which will be 6th grade next year. And so we're getting ready to come into opening day this weekend for the Little League baseball, and we've had only 6 practices because it's been raining so much. So it's going to be interesting to see how the kids get out there and play and hustle. I think some of these kids got some real good spirit and some skill to get out there. We got the results back. I emailed down there to the Findlay Market Parade to Deb Ganaway, and I said, hey, what's going on here? Who's winning this deal? We need to figure out if we're on the list. And she emailed me back last week and said, we didn't really do first, second, and third, and this and that. She goes, but you're at the top of the list. And of course, we are an award winner in the Findlay Market Parade. It's a big deal for us, and anybody that's from Cincinnati knows what a big deal it is. And I think that if you could ever look it up online, check it out and see what a big deal is. And we can send you some pictures of our float so you know it's not just on a hay wagon and just a bunch of people putting little paper things all over the place. It's a really, really cool deal. So we were excited to hear that today. That was a good positive feedback from the Findlay Market opening day Cincinnati Reds parade. All right, let's get into it. So today we're going to talk about what it takes to keep building these houses. And in the last couple of weeks we've been through, if you're following along, selecting your builder, selecting your architect, your designer, and we've taken you through all these phases. And on our last episode with me, like I said, we wrapped up with me. Well, not in our last episode, but the last episode that I did, we wrapped up permits and the construction loan closing, and now we're ready to start construction at this point in our ball game. And there's probably still some selections and things going on that we're just wrapping up, but we're ready to get after it and get out in the ground. So if there's any clearing that needed to be done in terms of trees, this needs to be done right away. This needs to be a meeting that's out there with you, the homeowner, and the builder, and making sure that you're talking clearly about what needs to be taken down. Sometimes we need to go out there and have the civil engineers do some staking before we actually decide which trees we're going to clear, because we need to know exactly what we're going to clear and where the house is going to be. And always, if you're in a neighborhood and it's a 100-foot wide lot and you're building an 85-foot wide house, you know where you're going to clear at, so it's pretty simple. But when you're out in the country, then those things change a little bit on those acreage lots. We don't want to take down trees, just so everybody understands that. And for anybody that's listening to, when you start talking about clearing trees, people start having a heart attack. None of us want to take down trees because it's a pain in the butt and it's expensive. And I think people buy wooded lots because they want the trees. So we have to take down trees that are going to be in our way, trees that could be affected by construction. You don't want to try and save something when you know good and well that you're going to damage it and it's going to die in 5 years and it costs you a lot more money to take it down later on. It's necessary to take these trees down. As a homeowner, you should be involved in this process with your builder early on. Make sure you both understand early what trees are coming out and what's staying. Underbrush, what to expect when this underbrush is cleared, what the builder is planning on doing, because it's always, you may have one vision and the builder has a different vision, or the builder's budgeted for a different vision. That's always tough. One of the most common issues in the beginning is for customers to come out and look around and say, can you clear more? Can you take this tree out? Can you do this? Can you do that? And while it's all possible, it's nothing holding us back, realize that it costs more to do more. It costs more to do more. It's a cost more to do more. Our first steps in starting the construction are having the land staked by the civil engineer. This gives us the footprint and the location of the home on the land, and it's exact. I mean, it's to the point. So they're going 5.04 inches or 5.04 feet off the property line. These things are that exact. This gives us the footprint and location on the land. And like I said, and the builder must double check the dimensions with the plot plan and the architectural plans to confirm that everything is exact. When we build these large ranches in these neighborhoods with specific lot sizes and setbacks, it's crucial that we are exactly where we need to be, because you have zoning laws, setback requirements. And if they say 7 feet and you're 6'5" or something like that, man, they could crack down on you, and it becomes a problem, becomes an issue. So you have to make sure. There's some municipalities that we build in different cities that we have to do what we call pinning the footer. So as soon as we get the footer laid out, we have the surveying crew come back a third time and come out there and they pin the footer on the corners to make sure that we are exactly where we need to be with the corner of that foundation wall, because some of them are so picky that they won't let it go, and they'll make you tear it out, and you got to get variances or different things to the extreme. And so we have to make sure we do that. It's very stressful that these things are in place, and you got to make sure that it's perfect. It's not, when you're out in the country, it's a little bit different. When you're on the acreage lots, it's a lot different, because if you're off 1 foot to 10 foot to 15 foot on a 5 acre lot, nobody cares, because this is where you want to be at, unless you're right up against the property setback. But you can move that house wherever you want to be. We need to make sure that any of the areas that cannot be disturbed are marked off. This goes for manholes, stakes for the sewer, water lines, the property lines, trees that need to be protected, and septic areas. So you have a fence up around the septic area, making sure that if you have an excavator, that you're not doing your excavation yourself, you have an excavator out there, and he's not running trucks over top of it, throwing dirt back on the septic system, not running a track machine around the trees, and not taking out your stakes. Those stakes, they have little flags on them, but they might as well be targets, because I think excavators get a kick out of coming out there and running over the stakes, and then we can't find out where we should have been for things. It costs money. When you lose those stakes, it costs money. When you lose a sewer stake, and the sewer and water utility guys have to come out there and dig for a day and a half trying to find a tap, it's a pain in the ass, and it's expensive. And so you have to protect those things and make sure you're watching that. The other next step that we do, and this is all in the initial stages before we're digging, is we're installing erosion control and the construction drive, and both go hand in hand with each other. They're both considered forms of erosion control. We need to protect the areas around us from soil runoff when it rains. The government and the EPA don't like it when and they don't want us to lose the soil and make it onto neighboring properties, down into the storm sewers, down into the creeks, to the rivers, etc. And the neighbors don't want it on the street, of course, either, and we don't either. You got to get out there and clean the street. There's mud everywhere, and and most of the time we're building in very expensive neighborhoods, very expensive homes, and somebody comes slinging down the road in a $250,000 car, and you got mud and nails all over the drive or the street. They're going to be upset, rightfully so. So this is something that's important. When I was younger, and we didn't worry about a lot of these things. We didn't have portlets on the job. We didn't have erosion control. We didn't have any of this stuff. We didn't have dumpsters. We burnt everything or we buried everything, and it was different times then. And now we have so much more things to be conscious about, and erosion control is definitely one of them that's come a long way. Almost every county that we build in now has a soil and water conservation district that comes out and inspects our job sites on a weekly basis, and gives us a report on what they don't like about what we're doing. The construction drive is crucial for all of our big trucks to get in and out of the site and keep everything clean. Most of the big trucks early on need to get as close to the basement as possible. This consists of our form truck with the concrete forms on it, the concrete pump truck, the gravel trucks. Everything needs to get up to the house as close as possible, and you need to make sure that those guys can get there. Your job and their job depends on it. I guess I should say the builder's job and the driver's job depends on you having that site ready for them to get up there. If they come out there and slipping and sliding and getting stuck and buried everything, and they can't get up there, well, then that ruins your day and it ruins theirs, because they get paid by the load probably. It should be an area, and the construction drive should be located in an area that's close to where the actual driveway is going to go, because you don't want gravel being dumped anywhere unless it's going to be where the driveway is going to go, because you cannot get that stuff out of the soil, and you want to make sure you keep that stuff in the driveway. And it's also where we're coming in and out of the curb and driving up to the house once the house is ready to be built. When we're out in the country or in a place that has no curb, we call it a ditch street there. We have to install a culvert pipe. And then we have to put gravel over top of the culvert pipe, and there's codes and rules and inspections and permits that you have to get for that. But you have to do that just to even be able to access the property, because you can't just drive everything down over the ditch. So again, that construction drive is very, very important there. The other technical thing that this does is it protects the street and the curb for the weight of the big trucks coming in and out of there. So we have to undercut the subsoil behind the curb, and we have to compact that gravel that we usually use, like a 2 or a 4 gravel, which is a larger rock. And then we lock it in with a B19 or a limestone on top of it. And that way it's forced up against the back of the curb. When those big trucks come off the curb, they're hitting another solid pavement, which is rock, and it's not cracking the curb, and it's not buckling the pavement out there at the street. All of those things, again, are damage to the property. You have to tear it out. You have to replace it. And you want to make sure that we do that the right way. So we're not out there trying to take care of it. Later on, we need to order the portalet, the drain tile, and schedule the temporary electric service to be installed. And many of these tasks are a hell of a lot more than what I'm telling you or leading into. For example, like the electrical service, electrical temporary pole. If you're in a neighborhood, it gets pretty simple. The builder goes out there and installs a temporary electric pole, or the electrician does. We own all of our temporary poles, so it's like a 2x10 that goes up in the air. It's got a meter base on it. It's got outlets on it, and then a cable that gets down and buries over to the transformer. And then the energy company comes out and hooks it up. There's codes on how we do the 3-point braces on it and how high and how far away from the transformer can be. When you get out in the country, there's a whole list of things that you have to do because it's not a developed site, so to speak. So you have to meet with the energy company way early on, get this process started, think about how they're going to get the electric over to the site. If the poles are on your side or if they're on the opposite side of the street, if they have to set a new pole, if they're going to be setting a new transformer, if it's overhead power lines, you have to have a completely different temporary pole than what you had for an underground transformer that's in a neighborhood. We have to get the power off the wires that are up in the air. And all of those things take a lot of time and a lot of thought process and a lot of meetings and a lot of phone calls to try and get the meetings to happen out there and make things move along as quick as possible, because the energy companies are not nearly as in a hurry as we are. And that's all I have to say about that. And then another thing that should have been considered long before now, because we're getting ready to dig the basement. But another thing that should have been considered long before now is if you are importing or exporting the dirt. Do you need dirt or do you need to haul dirt off? If you need to haul it off, this should have been estimated early on for budgeting purposes. However, now you need to find a place to take it. You need to line trucks up and you need to balance the site. And you want to haul it off on the dig. You know, we do our own excavation here, and my brother runs all the equipment for us and does a great job with it. And we want to, when we're getting ready to haul dirt, and we dig basements for other builders too, and we do a lot of other work for other people. And you got to be conscious of what you're doing. So anytime you're handling this material twice, the more expensive it gets and the more of a pain in the butt it gets. So when he's taking a scoop out of the hole, I want to put it in a truck. Taking a scoop out of the hole, put it in a truck and hauling it off. If you're taking a scoop out of the hole and laying it out and then taking it out and laying it out and then going over and picking it up and putting it in a truck later on, now you're paying for everything twice. All the machines operate on an hourly basis, and it gets expensive to do that. The time to figure this out is not the day that you show up on the job with the excavator and go, oh man, we got to haul dirt off here. And then you're hustling around, because what happens is nobody wants this dirt for free most of the time. You're paying to dump it somewhere at the site. The truck drivers, all these truck drivers are busy. There's a reason why dump trucks are $500,000, $700,000 is because they're busy and they're needed and people are out there busy. And you don't want to be sitting there trying to pay this guy, $150 an hour, looking around going, what are we going to do with all this dirt? So you got to make sure that you get this squared away. If you have to import dirt, which is not uncommon when we have a walkout basement, we have a site in a development where the developer couldn't balance the site. That's as nice as I have to say about that too. And screwed a lot over, and you have to bring dirt in there. You got to figure out where you're going to get it from. And in my case, whenever we got to get rid of dirt, you can't find a place to take it. And whenever you need dirt, you can't find anybody that's got it. So you got to make sure that you get on top of that early on. And don't put don't put the dirt on the lot next to you. That's not the same as getting rid of it. That's called screw your neighbor or screw you later on. Don't do that. Now we can dig the basement. So we've done all these other things, and now we're finally ready to dig the basement. I get into too much detail on this stuff, but I'm going to give you, that's what we're doing this for. I want to make sure that homeowners and other people know and understand what we're going through to get to these points, and there's certain techniques that you have to have in place to be able to do these things. So now we can dig the basement. It's important to understand that when digging the basement, the height of the foundation above grade is what we call the elevation. There's two terms for the elevation. When we look at the elevation on a plan, we're talking about usually what the front, side, rear of the house looks like. And then when we talk about an elevation height, we're talking about the distance above sea level. And most of those engineers are giving you a number of like 541.6 to figure out where the height of the foundation. When we are out there looking at digging the basement, and we're considering a couple things. What's on either side of us? What's the drainage look like? Is there a minimum opening elevation that some genius has put on there from the county, or the Army Corps of Engineers or somebody like that? When we're sitting 6,000 feet up in the air from any waterway, they think that there's a chance that water might run uphill and flood the basement. You have to look for those. I'm a little bit bitter on some of these things if you haven't figured it out yet. And we got to look at the sewer, the lateral coming off the street for the sewer. And this is common in a neighborhood. So when the developer builds the neighborhood, puts the roads in, puts the utilities in, there's a stub off for the water, there's a stub off for the sewer. and the sewer is below the curb at a certain height. And you got to make sure that your basement is going to be above that, because you have to have a certain amount of fall coming down to that to get the water, to get the sewage to flow out of there. There's a couple different ways you can figure this out. One is you can go to the engineers who design a neighborhood. You can go to pull up the manhole cover wherever that's at closest to you, and you can stick a tape down in there. But the surefire way to do it is just to dig it up while you're there on the excavation, and you can find the depth that way, and be positive about where you're at with it. On the large acre sites, it's equally important as well, not necessarily on the sewer, but we want to make sure that the height of this sitting above the curb gives you positive drainage away from the house. And water intrusion, moisture, everything is something that's one of the biggest things that we deal with building these houses, and the grade is probably the most common where you have problems at if it's not graded properly, if it can't get the water away from the house, if the water can't get off the lot into a proper drainage area. That's an issue. So you want to make sure that this is all the things you're looking at when you're setting the height above the street. If you're in a neighborhood, the height above the street is going to affect the steepness of your driveway. It's going to affect how many steps you have coming into your house. It's going to affect how easy of a job you have to mow your grass. There's a lot of different things that can come into play here when you're setting the height of this foundation. Now, again, I keep saying this. Now we can start digging the hole. Now we can start digging. Well, we got to do all these other things to make sure that what we're talking about before we start digging. But now, for real, we can start digging the basement. We do our own excavation. Like I said, my brother Mike has gotten really awesome at it here in the last several years, and we started out renting our equipment, and then one year we said, hey, let's buy it, and we bought a big Caterpillar 323 excavator. About I think a 30-ton something machine, and we've got a very large skid steer, and then we've got a mini excavator, and we've got other attachments and things that go along with that allow us to do our job. We also excavate for other builders and do some things for other homeowners, and be honest with you, I think these guys really enjoy it because, for one, Mike's good at it, but for two, we're builders and we know what they go through. This is one of the easiest ways to get your eyeballs screwed out, is when you got a guy sitting out there camping out on his excavator, charging you this amount of money, got trucks sitting there and just, running around doing whatever. And the job will get done and it'll look nice, but it'll be, 5 days longer than what it needed to be with extra equipment. And we know what you're going through as a builder. So we're out there doing the job the right way and doing it the most efficient way. So anybody can, when you talk about running this equipment, most people could do a tutorial and they could run this equipment, and it's pretty simple. You figure it out. You run the sticks back and forth and move the bucket up and down. It's a skilled effort to be able to do this, and it's not just hogging out the basements. You've got to make sure so many different things are in place. Where you want to put the soil at. I want that basement, and we want that basement peeled back like you dug it out and just laid it up on the side and peeled it back all the way around there. You don't want to take it and put it in big piles in different places. You don't want to take it and try and get it as far away from the area that you're going to put it back in later on. You got to make sure that you're conscious of all these things that we talked about before, where you're the undisturbed areas where you do not want to be at. You got to make sure you understand how to use a laser and what it means to keep this level. When you get down to the bottom of this hole, the thing I talked about is you got to make sure you protect those stakes. You're not out there trying to bury everything and just say, oh, I don't know what happened to them, and just throw your hands up. You got to make sure you protect those stakes. It's what makes you a good excavator. All of these things. When you get down to the bottom of that hole, now you're not hogging it out anymore. Now you're getting it on grade, is what we call it. So we have a laser transit, and this thing shoots it, and we want it exactly flat on the bottom of that hole, and maybe within an inch. And if you can't do that, then you're not going to be lasting very long in the excavation business. It saves us on our concrete. It saves us on our gravel. And the other thing that it needs to be doing that is you don't want a bunch of dips up and down in this bottom subgrade of your basement, because the water has to go somewhere. We want to direct the water over to the daylight grade or the daylight drain or the sump pump. And if it's 10 inches in one side and 8 inches in another and 12 inches over here, that water is going to stand underneath that basement. And we don't want to do that. We want to make sure we're protecting against that. We dig everything with the excavator now, and when I was a kid growing up in this business, and we always, everybody had a loader, a front end loader. And when I was even younger, they had a front engine loader. And then I don't know what year that was that they switched it, most of them, to a rear engine loader, and all the controls. I mean, just the technology has come so far. I mean, you had to be quite the badass to be able to run one of them pieces of equipment back in the day, because you had like 37 levers and two foot pedals and all kinds of stuff. And you had to be pretty quick to be able to do it. So now it's a lot different. You've just got a couple joysticks and some foot levers, and you're getting through it. But when we were running it with that loader's going down there, taking a bucket, tracking back up through the ramp, going out and dumping it, running back down in the hole, and which isn't bad, but the other part of it is it was turning all the time. It's turning on that soil down the basement, and it's turning on the soil up on the top of it. It disturbs it, and that sound like a big deal, but it is, and it makes a big difference. So we talked about getting it flat and getting all those areas. We also have another area where we call it unexcavated. So your basement, where it's going to be livable space in there, is excavated. The unexcavated parts are the porches and the garages, where they're just getting that footer down below the frost line. In Southwest Ohio, our frost line is 30 inches. You get to Columbus, I think we're 36, and you get up to the lake up there in Cleveland, you're probably 48, I believe. And so this is the area below the ground that, in the coldest of cold, that's where it's going to freeze. And when the ground freezes, it freezes and thaws, it expands and contracts. And when it freezes, it picks slabs up and drops them down. It's just amazing, the power of nature that can tear these houses up. So we have to make sure that those footers are down below where any frost could get underneath them and raise them up or down. And we're on good solid soil. So that's what the unexcavated part of that. So what we do is we just trench that area with the excavator, and we get it flat, and then that's where we're pouring it. Once the excavation is complete, for the footer can be placed in the hole. And one thing I'll back up to a little bit here, and I skipped over this, was when we dig the basement, we dig it 3 feet wider than what it needs to be all the way around. So if your house is 85 feet wide, it's going to be 6 feet wider than that. And because we need a space to walk around down there with the panels, and we also need that space to create it for a drainage area with that water coming down through there. And we're going to backfill it with gravel and then put the dirt on top of that. And that's the overdig is what we call it. So once the excavation is complete and the footer can be placed in the hole, the purpose of the footer is to have a flat spot to set the wall on. It's the only purpose of the footer. You can use the cheapest concrete you want on the footer. The soil bearing capacity is the load bearing capacity for what you're doing. It's not the footer. It's the soil. So the soil has to be great. Now, if you run into a case where the soil doesn't have that great a capacity, you got to get an engineer, a soils engineer, a structural engineer. You got to get out there and do some trenching, maybe some piering. You got to spread the footer. The footer then comes into a different play on how that all works out and what we're doing with that. But the footer is the sole purpose, or not the sole purpose, but one of the main purposes is just to get a good, flat, solid spot for the wall to sit on. The other purpose of it is that in Southwest Ohio here, the majority of our footers are 8 inches thick, and we're trying to create that sub gravel base underneath the gravel, the basement floor. And then we also run what we call sleeves or drain tile every 6 to 8 feet all the way around the whole perimeter that goes through the footer, that we're actually bringing the water from the outside into the pipe on the inside and running it around to the sump pump or the daylight drain and getting it drained out of there. So it creates a spot for us to be able to get that drainage. It creates a spot for us to be able to get our plumbing in there, our lower level plumbing. And that's where, and we run it over and we run it out of the house and run it into the main sewer drain. So all of that thickness is for the weight bearing capacity, but also for us to be able to do all those other things within that cavity. I'll get into what we do on the outside for the gravel and everything like that when we talk about the backfill. But the footer also has what we call a keyway in it. And this is just basically, it looks like a V cut into the center of the footer where the center of the wall is going to go, or it's going to go right underneath the wall. So when we pour that concrete in the wall, that concrete soaks down into that V. It locks it into the footer, but it also creates like a little dam there so no water can penetrate in between the wall and the footer. Depending on the architect or the engineer and the soil, some footers require steel rebar reinforcement in them. We've had footers that don't have any steel in them at all, and then we've had other footers that look like a Kokosing bridge going across 275. It's got more steel in it than it does concrete, which is really cool to see. But it's man, there's something going on there if we've had to engineer it that much. If you look at your footer when it's all complete and you wonder what all the other center points or random big long footings are in the center of the hole, these are bearing spots. So everything that we do in this house, the whole house works as a system. And you might have, if you've got a 2-story, you might have a girder truss that's pointed, but it's got a point load coming down to a spot that makes it all the way down to this footer that's in the middle of the floor, or the footer that's on the outside of the wall. It's designed that way. It's structurally built that way. And that's what these other footers are. Some of them are just like pods out there that are round. Some of them are square. Some of them are big, long ones. The ones that are pods usually have a beam column sitting underneath them, or sitting on top of them. The ones that are longer have a bearing wall that sits on top, which is a framed wall that we set the joist on to carry the load of the first floor and the second floor, and so on. These things are usually, these areas, like I said, our footers are usually 8 inches thick. These bearing points are usually 12 inches thick inside of there. These are very critical, because if it's not sitting on the right soil, it's not the right depth, and you have all that weight pushing down on there, or something goes awry and pushes it up, it'll screw that whole house up, and it's going to be it's more than a day. It's not going to be just a day. It's going to be a long, long time for you to fix that. Once we get the footer complete, we place the gravel inside the basement with what we call slinger trucks. And this is where it's just a different goofy looking truck, but it's got a big conveyor belt on it. And these guys can kick that belt around, and then we sling the gravel in there, which is a hell of a lot better than what we used to do when I was a kid, which was the loader we used to just get it dumped in straight trucks out there somewhere. And the loader would go pick up a bucket, and he would just dump the gravel over top of the wall down into the footer. And then I had to go down there with a shovel and a wheelbarrow and make little tracks with wood or plywood or 2x10s or something, and spread that gravel by hand all over that place. Now, if you get a 3,000 square foot basement, man, I'm telling you, that's tough. And I have nightmares about it still. So thank God for the slingers. Makes everything a lot easier. And we're a little bit smarter to do it the way we do it now. Is we put the gravel in there as soon as the footer is done. We put the drain tile in there, and we put the footer in there, and then we do it. So we use what we call a perforated slotted drain tile. We run it around the outside of the footer, and we run it down around the inside of the footer. And like I said, we've got those sleeves that run through the footer. And there's hydrostatic pressure that comes up from underneath the floor from water. There's moisture. There's water that's on the outside of the foundation, water that's on the underneath the slab in there. We need to give that relief. We need to get it out of there. So this slotted drain tile, and we cover it with pea gravel on both sides of it. It allows that water to penetrate through the gravel, get into those slots, and then drain all the way around down to the sump pump. And then we take the sump pump and it pumps it up out of there. Or if we're on a walkout where we can daylight that to the exterior, then we daylight it somewhere out down over the hill. So that's really a very important task. It's a task that we do fairly quickly in the morning. So as soon as the guys are done with a footer, then the next day we want to get that gravel in there right away, get that drain tile in there right away, and get it covered up, and then we come back and we sweep the footer off and make sure it's all ready for the wall guys. And once when the wall guys can move in, like I said, the footer needs to be swept off and be ready for them, looking good. Hopefully you have a good wall guy that's going to be ready there to show up right away, and not just leaving it sit there for forever and until he gets around to get over there and get it done. Because what happens then is if it rains and you're pumping it out, pumping the water out of there, and you have possible cave-ins that happen with the dirt going around there, and then you've got to dig that crap out, man. And it's not dry dirt that you just dig it out. You've got to get it up on top of the basement, on top of the grade, and it's usually soaking wet and just kills you. So these are things, again, that I have nightmares about that drive me crazy. So for all of our wall forms, we like to use what we call a wood Simon's form. These panels are 2 feet wide. They make them in 8 foot, they make them in all different sizes, but our walls are anywhere from 9 to 10 to 11 foot tall, 12 foot tall. And they have a wood face on them. The other option most guys use, a lot of guys use, are they're aluminum panels. The aluminum panels are 3 feet wide, and they're all aluminum. And the difference I always see between these two panels is our wood Simon's forms. When we get to the top of them, put these little finish nails in there, and they're shooting the grade all the way across there with a laser transit. And it makes sure that the top of that wall, when we pour it down inside the form a little bit, is perfect level all the way around there. The aluminum forms, or you're going to do the same. I hope you're going to do the same thing. Most of the time, those guys, they put those together and then they just screed the top of it off, and what you get is what you get. Now, if the footer is out a little bit, then it makes that panel walk a little bit. But hopefully, you got a great foundation guy that's using either panel, the Simons or the aluminum panels, and they're very conscious about what they're doing with both of them. But that's the difference in just something that it's a. Nothing wrong with either one of them. It's just a personal preference that I've always had on these things and how guys do things. While they're forming up the walls, they're also installing the rebar in the wall. And again, this depends on the architect and how much and how and where the steel goes. Some of our plans have 3 rows of 2. We call it 3 levels of 2 rows going all the way around there that are vertical. Some of our plans have number 4s and number 5s, which is the difference between a 1/2 inch and a 5/8 or a 1/2 inch and a 3/4, and different thicknesses of steel. Some of them are doweled down into the footer and going vertical all the way up through the wall. A lot of them it just depends on the soil. It depends on the outside load of the wall, the dirt pushing up against the wall, how high you're going to backfill it. And depends if the wall steps down, how long the run is in a wall, if it doesn't have any offsets in it, like a porch or something. All of those things come into play on how that is. When we install the steel, I want that steel coming. The steel rebar is usually 20 feet long, and I want that steel to be bent. So the guys are bending the wrap around the corner and usually running 4 to 6 feet down the other wall, and then the same thing when they come back towards you. And the option to do this is some guys just take the steel and they tee it up against each other, and then they just tie it with a piece of wire, which allows for it to just pull apart. If you needed it to be strong and hold something, you don't want that thing to just be tied in a corner and it can pull apart. I want it wrapped all the way around the corner, so where if it starts pulling on it, it's not going anywhere because it's got so much more steel on both sides of it and pulling around there. Steel placement is a big deal especially when you're engineering it into a hillside district or a certain type of backfill. The placement inside the wall, so it doesn't need to go in the center of the wall. If you have a lot of backfill on the outside of the wall or a certain soil condition on the outside of the wall, then you're probably going to want that steel closer to the outside of the wall. So when it's pushing on it, it's pushing more on the steel and then getting into the concrete barrier. It's almost like the concrete has got its shoulder into the steel, and the steel's holding it back and pushing back on it. A lot of different things that happen here with that steel is very important, and you got to have a good understanding yourself, and your wall guy has to have a really good understanding about what it takes to do this. We want the walls level, square, straight, and we want the beam pockets, the windows, and the door openings all to be in the right spot and the right size. And while this makes common sense, it's the biggest thing that we look for. Is that squareness, and you won't know how bad of a deal you got there until your framer gets up there to start framing that house and finding out how out square that foundation is. Now, this is something that we don't run into a lot. We've got really good wall guys, and they do a great job for us. But man, I've been in this business a long time, and I've seen some horrible wall guys that when they got done, I told them they ought to go down to the library and get a job just putting books back on the shelf because it was horrible. This is a big deal. Make sure that this is what these guys need to make sure of. When we like for our guys to do what we call rod in the wall, or they have a concrete vibrating machine that goes into the wall, and this allows the aggregate to get covered completely in the cream of the concrete, and the wall is smooth and looks very pretty on the inside of it. Doesn't give any what we call cold joints, is where the two aggregates come together and you can see almost the gravel in the wall. That doesn't turn out good for anybody and creates a void in that concrete, which is what we don't want. We use anchor bolts on the top of our walls to secure the wall plate to the wall. This has a treated wood that goes on top of the wall. So when we build our concrete wall up, and then we have a treated sill plate that goes on top of the wall, and then we bolt that plate down with these bolts that go into the wall. We run them every 3 feet all the way around the perimeter of the foundation. And again, the purpose of this is to create that. It's making that plate stuck to the wall, and then the floor joist get fastened to that plate, and then the floor joists have the subfloor on top of them. It's creating that box. This is your base. So you have the walls coming up. You have your basement floor holding the bottom of the walls together. You have your subfloor holding the top of the walls together, and that's what this bolt is for. I've had guys say before is like the majority of what we do is for the shear on the walls, not just a point load, is for the shear. How the house gets affected when the wind blows, when the temperature's changing, when whatever's happening. And God forbid if you ever have a tornado. Good Lord, what's wrong with me? If you ever have a tornado, the reason why they call it an F5 or an F4 is usually the size of the wake that it takes. So if an F5 is 30 miles, by us doing certain things to these houses, it reduces that 30 miles to 25 miles or 20 miles. That's what our hope is. And so by putting these bolts on this plate and then fastening your floor joist to it and making sure that we have a nailing pattern for the floor joist and everything that we're doing here, it will make the house safer and stronger. And so it's not necessarily where the whole house is just going to blow away and you'll just have a top plate there with bolts on it. That's not what we're doing. It's working as a system. Those bolts are a special galvanized bolt that can react good with the chemicals in the concrete. You can't just put any kind of bolt down there. This has to be a specific bolt that goes into the concrete. While we're pouring the foundation, we dip these bolts down into the concrete on the top. You have to know whether you're getting brick or stone or siding on the house. It doesn't know how far back you're going to set the bolt, and that's how they get stuck into the concrete. They have little 90-degree turns on the bottom of them. Something else to consider when we're wrapping up this part about the foundation is if you're getting a 9-foot basement, your ceiling height is probably going to be 8 feet 9 inches tall, because we pour it at 9 feet, and then we pour our basement floor at 4 inches on top of that. Then we have our 1.5 inch top plate on top of there. It's not going to be most of the time a 9-foot wall. 10 foot, you're going to get a 9 foot 9. Just something to consider for what's happening there. When the wall's completed, the guys come back the next day and they start stripping the panels off. This usually goes quicker than forming a wall. And once they're complete and out of the way, we can mark the wall for the waterproofing compound. And the way I normally do it is I've got a piece of rebar with a bent, it's bent 90 degrees, and I have a marker taped on the end of it, or you have a piece of chalk that you tape to the end of it. You have to understand what the grade is going to look like when you want this completed, when you want it backfilled, what the grade looks like, because this is where you're establishing it basically right now with this waterproofing. You don't want this waterproofing sticking out above the grade, because it looks horrible and you can't put anything over top of it that's going to cover it up and make it look nice. So you want the waterproofing to be below the grade and protecting that wall. So I mark the wall, or we go down and mark the wall, and it tells everybody exactly where it is. This is a process that's critical. We use a very thick waterproofing compound that goes around the wall, and it's not just a spray on, make it look black, and it's called damp proofing. It's a waterproofing compound. And then we also use a 3/4 inch insulation board that goes around the outside of it. The insulation board gets put on there to protect the tar and the waterproofing compound from when we're backfilling it and from the dirt that's going up against it. As the life of the foundation goes, you don't want it rubbing off or penetrating anything in that waterproofing compound. So we put the insulation board on there. When we do that, usually the waterproofing company gives you a better warranty. Usually goes from 10 years to 30 years on that waterproofing warranty. It's very important stuff. It also works as a moisture and a vapor barrier. So it's not just waterproofing compound that we're putting on there. We're protecting the spots. We're protecting the wall and protecting things from penetrating the wall. This is also the time to put all the window wells on. And as we're putting the waterproofing on, our waterproofing company usually installs the window wells for us, which makes it a lot nicer. And now we're ready to backfill the foundation, and we're getting close to anyway. Some things happen here, and I guess I should say that some things happen. We are also getting our lower plumbing in here. So the guys have stripped the wall. We don't backfill the foundation with the dirt on the outside of it and the gravel and everything for at least 7 days after the wall's been poured. We want that concrete to be at least 70-80% of its potential strength before we start backfilling it. And in that 7-day period, there's plenty of other things to do. We're getting the garages prepped. We're getting the basement floor prepped. We're getting our lower plumbing in. We have inspections. We have a plumbing inspection for that lower. We usually have a slab inspection in that lower, because we have to put a vapor barrier down, a 6 mil thick polyurethane barrier. that goes over top of the gravel. And then we have, sometimes in some municipalities, we have a backfill inspection, and sometimes we have a ground rod inspection. So all of these things are happening in that period. So there's plenty of other things to do. And then we pour the floor. We pour the basement floor. Sometimes we set the beams before we pour the basement floor. And it depends on what we got going on. And then we're ready to backfill. It's proper to have your basement floor poured before we backfill. You want that floor locking that base of that wall in, to where if for some reason that wall would kick a little bit on the inside of it, if you're beating the crap out of it, backfilling it the wrong way, you want to make sure that floor is holding it in. Now, technically, as opposed to the way we do some things, technically the subfloor should be on there, because you want to create this box. The subfloor is holding the top of the wall together, and the concrete floor is holding the base of the wall together. But we usually don't do that because it's unsafe for the guys to be up there on that wall and trying to run that subfloor out with nothing on either side of it. And it's a logistical nightmare, because now you've got lumber sitting there. Now you've got a guy that needs to come in there and push dirt around, and you got to have a dumpster there. You got to have all these different things there. It's good the way we do it. We're waiting on it. We're conscious of it. We're careful about what we're doing. So when we get ready to backfill, we get a couple loads of 1-inch gravel. We're backfilling the perimeter in the overdig with 1-inch gravel, where it goes up at least 2 feet, if not more, on the wall. And what we'd like to do here is we angle that 1-inch gravel a little bit away from the wall. And it's our philosophy that the dirt pushing down into this cavity will now push away from the wall and prevent that weight from pushing on the wall and causing it to crack or causing any harm to it. But the 1-inch gravel is crucial, because you want the water to soak down through the rainwater, storm water, whatever it is, soak down through the soil, filter through the gravel, get into those pipes, run all the way around the basement over to the sump pump or the daylight drain, and get out of there. And this is very, very important. And this is something that we do a lot of. We pay a lot of attention to it. And I don't think it's good to just turn somebody loose and just, say, hey, go put that in there, and think it's no big deal. It's a big deal to me. We also like to make sure that since we put the dirt, when we were digging the basement, we peeled it back, that we're not going and grabbing buckets of dirt, picking it up, and just dropping it down inside that cavity. It's not good to do that. What we want to do is come in there with the loader, and we start itching and pushing that dirt over the edge into the cavity. You want to just kind of push it and get it in there. Kind of push it. Let it fall in there. Don't pick it up and just drop it down in there, because that's like taking just a great big wrecking ball and smashing it up against that wall. Everything that we do is a finished product, and I don't think people understand that. The gravel that we put in is washed gravel, and it needs to stay that way. So you can't put it in there and say, it's gravel and it's muddy out, so just walk across it and who cares? You can't have a big, beautiful concrete foundation wall that everybody took pride in getting it there, and we worked hard to get it here, and then just do whatever you want with it. Just because it's concrete doesn't mean it's indestructible. It's very fragile still to any extent, and you have to take care of it all the time. And this is one of the ways to do that. And this is something that gets pushed off. I think people don't pay a lot of attention to this, and it's something that worries me, and I want to make sure it's done right. But I'll tell you that I worry about things, and I pay attention to things that most people couldn't give a damn about, and they sleep fine at night, and I wake up in the middle of the night worrying about it. But so this is that filling that cavity in, making sure we're protecting the wall. The other thing we can do is we backfill the garages and the porches with a gravel. It's usually a sand or a grit gravel is what we like to call it. And it's got a low settlement rate to it, but it fills it in. You don't want to put just dirt in there, because the dirt will settle and it'll continue to settle, and there's no good way to be able to get that all the way around there. And we want to make sure that gravel is giving us a good grade, and it makes it easier for us to pour the slabs on top of it. When we're done backfilling, and we're about to wrap this up here, but when we're done backfilling, the site should be graded completely with positive drainage away from the house. The swales should be cut in properly. The porches and the garages are graded to the top properly, because you don't want your framers up there and you still have a big pit out there, and they're walking around the top of that wall setting a subfloor, and they're teeter-tottering on 9-10 feet up in the air because whatever, I don't know what the hell happened, why you didn't just get it done to begin with. You got to make sure all this stuff is done. It should look beautiful out there when you're done with it. Respectable, and people should be excited, and you want to take a picture of it. If the erosion control needs to be touched up at this time because somebody ran over it, or you got into it when you're backfilling, now's the time to do that too. Making sure that the construction drive is topped off and finished, going all the way up to the house. And there's a place for more than a couple trucks to park up there, because you don't want the guys to which is just stupid if you're listening, to just drive up through the middle of the front yard, run over the silt fence, and because you had to carry a hammer into the house. You got to make sure they have a place to park out there on the concrete or on the gravel driveway, and give them places to get off the street. So that's taking us now. Our next episode with me. Now we're ready to frame, and we're ready to get moving on to this thing. And we're coming up out of the ground is what we call it. And now we're ready to start slinging the wood and getting the house framed. So we've gone a long way here. I hope that this isn't completely boring to you, and there's some beneficial information in there for you. I get excited about this stuff, but I hope you do too, and I hope it helps you in your process as far as building a house. Or if you guys, again, if you're a builder or somebody who works in this industry, and you're saying, "Hey, Jeff, you're stupid. You don't know what you're talking about," let's send me an email and let's talk about it, because I don't think that's completely true. Or if you've got some other suggestions or some other ideas, man, it's gonna be cool. So, hey, I'm off to, I'm going to wrap this thing up here, and thank you everybody for listening. But, this next week here, I'm off to something I haven't talked about a lot, but I'm in a group called Builder 20, and it's through our National Association of Home Builders. And there's, 15 or 16 of us from all across the country. And there's a lot of guys in Texas, Utah, Seattle, Michigan. They're all over the place, and there's some of the greatest builders I've ever met in my entire life, and they do things right, and they're just amazing people, and they're good people, and we like to have a little bit of a good time too when we're up there at these places. So we visit. There's a host, and it's one of the members of the group, and they host. We usually have, so this is our financial meeting. We open up our books. We act like each other's board of directors. Everybody knows every single thing about each other's companies. How much everybody makes, money-wise, how much every employee's paid, how much we're paying in insurance, how many houses we did good, what's our margins. Everything goes through this group, and it's very, very important to me. So I'm leaving next Friday or this coming Friday to go up there. We're going to Harbor Springs, Michigan. And my man Scott Kennard is up there, and from Wentworth Builders, and just build some awesome product. And man, I'm really excited about seeing this thing. So this is an episode where we will talk about this episode someday about getting help. And this is one of those groups that helps me a lot, and amongst a list of people who really get me there and keep me on the straight path. So, hey, I just wanted to mention that. Thank you again to everybody for listening. It's really important to us, and we get excited about this podcast. This is our 4th month into it. I hope you're enjoying it. I hope you're sharing it. I hope you're sharing it with your friends. I hope you're using this information. So if you want to subscribe to the WB Download, it's on your favorite podcast. It's on Apple, it's on Google. And, we've just recently made our switch to everything in our office is on Google now. And it's awesome. I had no idea that Google was not just for internet use. So it's really cool how it's going. I want to remind you. So, we are on the 4th Tuesday of the month right now in April. We will be coming back on the 2nd Tuesday of May. And I'm not sure who our guest is just yet. We've got 2 special people lined up, and we've got another one for the end of May. It might skip over me because I interviewed a friend of mine and recorded it not too long ago, and it is an awesome interview, and I was really excited about it. So we might do him at the end of May. So if you want to be a part of the conversation, or you have questions, topics, or whatever you want, you can join me at the WB Download at WielandBuilders.com. Send in all your information. It's WB Download at WIELANDBuilders.com. And for more behind the scenes of our podcast and these beautiful custom luxury homes that we build, go to WielandBuilders.com. It's WIELANDBuilders.com. Thanks again for everybody for listening. I appreciate it. Hope you got a lot of use out of it, and we will catch you the next time. Thank you for being here.